όλους. Εκ μέρους του Ιδρύματος Έρευνας και Καινοτομίας θα ήθελα να σας καλωσορίσω σε αυτό το webinar με την ευκαιρία της ανακοίνωσης των 5 νέων προσκλήσεων για το πρόγραμμα KDT Digital Technologies. Εντάξει, είχαμε από ό,τι βλέπω αρκετές περισσότερες εγγραφές, ωστόσο έχουν μπει μόνο ένα μικρό σύνολο των ατόμων που εγγραφτήκαν. Θα προχωρήσουμε όμως, θα ξεκινήσουμε με το σεμινάριο και φαντάζομαι ότι οι υπόλοιποι θα μπορούν να κάνουν join στη συνέχεια. Σας ενημερώνω ότι το σεμινάριο θα βιντεοσκοπηθεί και θα είναι στη διάθεση σας στη συνέχεια τόσο η βιντεοσκόπηση όσο και οι παρουσιάσεις της ημερίδας. Η ημερίδα θα γίνει στα αγγλικά, καθώς έχουμε μαζί μας τον εκπρόσωπο του KDT Office. So, good morning everyone. Let me welcome Mr. Yves Gigas. He's the program manager in the KDT office. We will start with a presentation from Yves regarding the general conditions for participation and general information about the joint calls that have been launched by the Key Digital Technologies joint undertaking. Then I will take the floor to present the national rules and conditions for participation of Cypriot partners. And at the end, we will have the opportunity to have a discussion and respond to your questions. You can submit your questions in the chat during the webinar, and we will respond to the questions at the end of the webinar. So, Yves, I will give the floor to you, and you can share your presentation.
Okay, thank you very much for inviting me. Good morning to the Cypriotic community on electronics. Let me share my screen and my presentation. There you are. Right, so you should now be able to see the screen. Is that okay?
Yes, perfect.
Perfect, okay, good. So I'm from the KDT joint undertaking, KDT standing for Key Digital Technologies. I'm the head of programs of that joint undertaking. There are several joint undertakings, but this one is specifically on the electronic component and systems community. I will first briefly introduce you KDT before explaining you a bit more about the call. 2022. KDT was launched in November of last year, in 2021. The predecessor of KDT was the Excel joint undertaking. It's one of the very few tripartite joint undertakings. Tripartite meaning that both the Commission, the participating states, and what we call industry associations have, a say in the governing board and decide commonly on a number of decisions, basically. The industry associations, I should rather call them the associations. I don't know why they were called industry associations in the very first text. They've still called industry associations, but as they're both, these associations have as members not only industry, but also SMEs and also universities and RTOs. So there is a very large community. We have 3 associations that participate to the KDT joint undertaking, ENEAS inside EPOS. Remember those names. I'll say something more when I talk about the call 2022, but remember those names, look them up. They are the ones that you actually are going to contact when it comes to participating to projects and things like that. I mean, they're the ones that basically are putting together our strategic research agenda, or organizing brokerage events, or organizing conferences and stuff like that. So they're really, your voice inside, I would say, the KDT joint undertaking. For KDT, there is a certain budget ambition of 7.2 billion euro in cost and in projects, basically, and it's funded through 1.8 billion euro by the EU and 1.8 billion euro national. Now, national has to be decided each year, so we hope to achieve the 1.8 billion euro. You see here below how that works basically. So each project is funded in part by the European Union, in part by the participating states, and there is also a contribution by the participants. I give you some more words of details on funding rates a little later. It's based on Horizon Europe, so we're following nearly all the procedures of Horizon Europe. But we do have a few specificities in our calls and in our projects. It's a bottom-up program with top-down focus topics, meaning that it's the national authorities basically decide which topics are open, and basically national authorities and associations, and basically there is a very large range of topics that you can apply for, and these topics are described in the strategic research agenda. But at the same time, each call also contains a number of top-down focus topics, and I will explain what those are for the call 2022. And so these are much more focused, if you want, and in general, try to cover some urgent issues, I would say. Regarding the value chain approach, our projects are in general quite large because we need to cover the whole value chain, whatever the value chain is and how you define it. But the idea there is really that we have, each project should contain various elements. We'd like to see in each project, end user together with the conceivers of the technology, the companies that are making this technology available, and also, for example, universities that are doing research and that are basically supporting the companies to further develop these technologies. Okay, so value chain approach. We have amongst our projects, amongst our calls also calls that cover the higher TRLs, the so-called ES, innovation actions that you know from Horizon Europe 2. We try to achieve there what we call pilot lines, meaning these are projects, larger projects where the companies involved mainly are going to I would say manufacturing, making products, etc., in a future stage after the end of the project. We are very much in favor of a critical mass approach. That is another reason why we try to have larger projects, is that in larger projects, for one, you create a certain stability, because if a partner drops out, there are sufficient partners in the consortium to take the job over and to continue with the project without damaging the project too much. But on top of that, in order to achieve results, and certainly in the higher TRLs, you need a fairly large community to make sure that every aspect of the what is being developed is being covered. And on top of that, as I said, the pilot lines, the higher TRL projects also prepare for the future. So in general, we have in a higher TRL project also parts and activities that are covering lower TRL, in order to make sure that there is a continued evolution in what is being developed there. The critical mass approach is important for us. It's focused on industrial leadership. That is in the Single Basic Act. We're there to essentially cover the famous Valley of Death, where this was something that 10 years ago was very much discussed. We've achieved that. We've achieved that in that several larger companies went to the market with their product. We've achieved that because several companies, other companies, decided to for example, invest in new manufacturing sites through the IPCEIs, through the important project of common European interest. So we focused on industrial leadership, but essentially in supporting the whole community basically supports the industry to move forward into the development and the manufacturing of new products in the electronic component and system field. And we have a common agenda in that the common agenda is, again, this strategic research and innovation agenda. And this fairly large size book, I mean, I think it's 500 pages, covers everything. It's being used not only by, in this case, Excel, I should say KDT. I mean, it's sorry about that. Here it should say KDT. So it basically covers everything, not only in terms of, for KDT, but also for other European programs. And we've heard that it's even used in the US and in China because it's one of the very few how would I say, complete works about what needs to be done in terms of, the future developments in that field. Here, pro memoria, the website. So be careful. It's KDT with a minus sign, GU, and then .europa.eu. Here, something also maybe not of importance for Cyprus, but we're also involving the regions in our projects. For example, in Germany and in France, the regions are involved in the funding of the projects. We're also involving and encouraging the use of other European funding mechanisms like the ESIF, like the recovery funds and things like that. But these are really topics more for the public authorities and less of importance for the participants. Just a reminder that there are other instruments where you can look for funding. We're just one of those. We're peculiar, you see in the arrow, we're peculiar in that we get both national funding and European funding, while, for example, the Eureka clusters essentially get only national funding. Then you have the national projects and the IPK, and then you have Horizon Europe, which gets only EU funding. So we're a bit in between, I would say, the Eureka kind of mechanism and the Horizon Europe mechanisms. Excel, so the previous program closed in 2021, and here you have a number of figures, and you immediately can see that the size the size of the program is quite large, of course, and this is going to increase. So basically, we're going to increase by 50%. These amounts under the KDT joint undertaking. Alas, we did not have participation of Cypriotic organizations, so I can't show you what some of your colleagues would have done under Excel, and we really hope that under KDT we see more of you. We've been covering, electronics is fast. I mean, most of you are professionals in that field, I suppose, and you're very much aware where that all goes. It goes from the manufacturing of chips to the manufacturing of all kinds of electronic devices for power, imaging, sensors, micro batteries, acoustics, packaging, the manufacturing of more advanced types of circuitry like neuromorphic chips. We're also involved in the development of quantum computing chips, but that's rather new. And then, of course, all these chips and circuits need to be used or can be used in, for example, edge computing systems, in autonomous systems, and those systems then can be used in applications, medical technology, smart grid industry, mobility, and cyber-physical systems in general, connected or not. And you see that this is fairly, our projects cover, all these different areas in a fairly uniform way. I've already said a few words about the ECS Estria, this book that so you see here a few elements. There's a number, we call that the foundational technology layers. You have cross-sectional technology, and you have the key application areas. So these are really the foundational, provide the basic technology, both hardware and software. Hardware in terms of process technologies, equipment, materials, components, etc., but also in terms of software, embedded software and system of systems. And you have the cross-sectional technologies that have to do with, artificial intelligence, connectivity, the architecture and design part, and the quality, availability, safety, security, and reliability of these components and circuits and systems. And then that is being applied in mobility, in energy, in digital industry, in healthcare, in agri-food and natural resources, and in the digital society. This document is revised every year, but the 2021 version is basically the one that is going to be used in KDT, and then every year you'll get an update on certain of the elements there. We'd like to, ensure and reinforce the EU's strategic autonomy. Of course, Europe has a number of goals, a number of objectives, overarching objectives for, all the research programs. And for example, the Green Deal is very relevant to what we're doing, as well as, the digitalization of the society. This is, about KDT. Let me now go to the call planning and the calls that we're about to launch. Just checking the hour here. Okay, I'm fine. So we launched already a first call, the call 2021, and in fact, we finished the evaluation and the selection of the project 2 weeks ago. So we have selected 13 projects for this call 2021, and they cover again various topics. I'm not going to go into the details of the call 2021 here, but so that is ongoing. And as you can see, after the preparation, and it's a rather short time, I have to say, we take 3 to 4 months for the call 21 and 22. After that, as you can see, there is an evaluation and selection part, and we are here. We're in end of July, basically, or mid-July, and we've selected the project, and now we're entering what we call the grant agreement preparation phase. That should close somewhere till end of November, and then the projects will start, the projects 2021. Now we're talking today about the call 2022. The deadline is the 21st of September 2022. So it's, you're joining a bit late, I would say, because the call was open already in beginning of May. We'll discuss that maybe a little later, how you can still participate to it. And so after that, we will have the evaluation and selection. We'll take the selection decision before the end of the year so that everyone knows if they're in a project or not. And then we'll start the grant agreement preparation. And the grant agreement preparation prepares both the European grant and also the national grant. And then we can start, and then we'll launch somewhere in February next year, the call 2023. We hope to have it again in this time in 2 stages, so to provide more time to the community, and a 2-stage basically means that you provide a first, I would say, draft project that is then evaluated. You get an answer back if you can continue that way or not, because it's not a subject that we're covering, for example. And then at the end we'll pass in again an evaluation and selection, and we'll select the project by the end of 2023 and start a gap. And then basically it continues. Each year there will be a call 2024, a call 2025, etc. These calls basically have, a number of, cover a number of calls. So it's not just one call, it's a NIA, it's a RIA, it's focus topics, etc. A word of caution. Yeah, I mean, we regularly, although this is less for the call 2022, but it will be for the call 2023, we regularly get updates by the national authorities about some of the national conditions, the national budget, the national eligibility, and things like that. So, and I'll show you that in a moment. So you need to, how would I say, you need to make sure that you regularly check the website. Our website basically contains all the information we have to provide about events, but also about the calls. And so I'll show you what you need to check there. If you have questions about the call, there is really only one email that you have to use. It's the calls@KDT Joint Underwriter. Don't try to write to me or to any one of my colleagues. Please use this email. That will provide you the quickest way to an answer. And then if you have an IT issue regarding the participant portal, because we're using the Horizon Europe participant portal, then you should call the IT help desk of the participant portal and of Horizon Europe, not us. We're not IT specialist, which is a bit bizarre because we're basically in charge of the largest European program on electronic component and system, but nevertheless, we're not, we can't help you on IT issues regarding the participant portal. So what is new? Well, Horizon 2020 is very similar to Horizon Europe. I hope some of you have in the past applied for projects under Horizon 2020 and maybe under Horizon Europe. So it's all very similar. You definitely, if you never have worked in Horizon Europe or Horizon Europe or 2020, you definitely will need to spend time navigating through this participant portal, reading through the documents and things like that. That is something I cannot do for you, and I cannot explain all that. There's just too much information there. The KDT call 2022 is very similar to previous calls that we had under Excel, but there are certain differences. And so it's always important for every call of a KDT, but in general for every call, even of Horizon Europe, to read all the sections in the work plan 2022 and to go through the documents. And I know that, those are not the most exciting documents that you can read, but nevertheless, if I can give you one good piece of advice, that is to go through all these documents, to read through all that in order to avoid any surprises. Now, let me quickly go to the website of the KDT Joint Undertaking, kdtjointundertaking.europa.eu, as you can see up there. And if you want to know, as you can see, there is information about the KDT, the movies, and there are the results of the KDT call. There is a number of other events that you can participate to. Just for your information, we also here, there is an events page, and what you need to go to, and I leave you up to you to discover the information that is on that website, is you go under participate to current calls. And then you can see, this call is now closed, so this will disappear, but we're in the call 2022, and you can view here the details. And just scrolling through, here is the announcement, what we're going to do. And, there is and I'll provide you more details about that, but you can see we have basically two, I would say, main calls, an IA and a RIA call. And in the IA call, we have a general call, we have two focus topics. And in the RIA, we have a general call also and one focus topic. So in total, 5 calls if you want. Who can participate? Everyone can participate to that. And here, and that is very important, here you find a link to all the call documents. Let's go, for example, to the ECSS RIA. Well, as you can see, you link directly to the ECSS RIA and you can find all the information here. Or if you want to have more information, you can have a look at the KDT work program. You can download it here. I'm going to do that. You also have a guide for applicants, which is very important if you plan to introduce a proposal. You have the proposal templates, etc., etc. Just go ahead. The model grant agreement that we're going to use, should you be selected, the rules regarding legal entity, the EU grant agreement, and this is an annotated, so it explains everything there, which is important if you need to know how to calculate, for example, your eligible cost under Horizon Europe. Okay, but of course this does not cover everything of Horizon Europe, so you should also, for reference here, there are some extra information, and you should also go to the participant portal. And then there is a very important section on the updates. And for example, one of the latest update was done 2 days ago, and it has been updated with information about the Cyprus budget and the national eligibility criteria. So let me go to the KDT work program here. and let it download now. And there is lots of information, but there is now also a Cyprus section. We go and click here, and here you can find all the information, which is important because you will need to apply also for national funding. Okay, and here you can find all the information for the national funding. Okay, you have the contact person, Mr. Marinos is there, and Georgios, and you have their phone number and email. So you can contact them, and then you have all the requirements and the different information on the calls, and they'll provide you more information after this, after my talk, etc., etc. Okay, and even the national funding rates. But you also have all the information, obviously, on the calls themselves. Okay, I mean, for example, if you want to have more information on the call, the general topic, then you go here and you have the scope and objectives, you have the information about the specific conditions, you have information about the eligibility, you have information about the evaluation criteria, about the scoring, about the selection criteria, about the indicative timetables, and about the funding rates, etc., etc. So this document is very complete. You have the updates. I showed you the updates. There are some deadlines, obviously, and the deadline is, the 21st September 2022. And then this is a hard deadline, okay? I mean, whatever we do not get by 5 o'clock on the 21st September is not considered for evaluation. And then here you have the link. Basically, if you click here, and I'll do that just for a moment, you are connected to the funding and tender participant portal. I generally refuse the cookies, and directly to our call. Okay, so this is the Commission website where you can link to the call, and if you click here, you are directly, you see, and then if you have a proposal, for example, on the silicon photonics, you can push here, and then you get all the information on the silicon photonics part, etc. So from there on, basically, you, how would I say, are going to work and introduce your proposals. Then you have here the EU budgets and the national budget, and we see that Cyprus has 3 million. And the collaboration tool, I'll come to that in a moment, and the help desk with the calls at KDT. Now, let me go back to the presentation. So I just showed you what you can find under this tab. I'm not going to go back. And now I'm going to say a word about the focus topics. So we have this year 3 focus topics, 1 on silicon photonics and industrial supply chain, 1 on the design of customizable and domain-specific open source RISC-V, and 1 on eco-designed smart electronic systems supporting the Green Deal objectives, okay? And each of these, you have to go to the work program 2022 for all the details, but each contains, the focus topic contains some specific requirements, okay? So the general calls are pretty open. You just refer to the SRIA and you go and look what is, you basically justify the introduction of your proposal by referring to the SRIA and to particular chapters in the SRIA, and showing that you're answering that. I mean, that's what you need to do in one of the evaluation criteria. But for the focus topics, you have as I said, some further description and some further requirements that we're looking for, okay? And I'm not going, in view of time, not going to discuss these focus topics in detail, but so you have 3 and they're described here. And then I already explained the call documents, the updates, the participant portal. Now to the ECS collaboration tool. So here we have the emails of the 3 industry associations and the direct link to the ECS tool, or one of the direct links to the ECS tool. And in the ECS tool, basically, you can, as it says, it's a networking tool for project IDs and potential partner. You can create a project ID, but you can also look for a partner, and you can propose your services to the wider community also. Okay, so this is a way to get into one of the projects that are being built up. Mind you, for the call 2022, this might be difficult, but I encourage you to try anyway. Because I'm pretty sure that there are a number of competences and and capacities that your community has, and which where our projects are still looking for. But definitely, you know, if you intend to participate in the future to KDT, you should definitely make yourself known to the larger community by going to the ECS. There are other ways of participating. Obviously, you can also go to how would I say, you can also go to the brokerage events, to the different other events that are listed and meet our community. Another thing that I like to show you also is when you go to our website, you can look in the documents. Wait a moment, where I always have to, sorry, I have to navigate myself a bit also here. Participate. Projects. If you go under participate projects, you have for all the past Excel projects, the KDT projects are not there, you can always get some information there. For example, if I go to AI Twilight, I get, for example, the institution that is basically coordinating this project, Signify Netherlands, some further details, some further explanation. So, you know, this can help you in trying to see which are, you know, how would I say, which are the organizations that are participating to certain projects. Now, most of the project, and I'm sorry that you know, the AI Twilight does not, the website is not listed, but most of the projects have a website. Now, this is this distributed artificial intelligence system is a fairly new project. It only started in May, so maybe the participant website for that project is not sufficiently explained, but here you can find even more, and you can find, and that is important for you, you can find the partners in this project. And so these can be a link basically to, you know, hooking up with some of these companies, hooking up with some of these universities or RTOs, in order to see how you can participate with them in other projects. Obviously, you cannot participate to this project, it has already been selected, but maybe they're going to start other projects. And so that's a way to, you know, network in our community. Let me go back to my presentation now. Right, there is one thing that you should be aware. We're not Horizon Europe in terms of funding, so we provide less funding. We're also higher in the TRLs. It's not pure research, so it means that you know, on the one hand, from the EU side, you will get these funding rates based on the Horizon Europe eligible cost, and it's up to the national authority to make up with, or to complement that to for the universities, maybe to 70% or to 100%. Let me warn you, we expect some kind of investment from your side, okay? We expect some kind of investment, maybe not from the universities, but for the RTOs certainly, and also certainly for the SMEs and large enterprise. You can see that the large enterprise only get 20%, and this is EU funding. So depending on what the national authority will do, they can also come up with 20%, in which case you will have to invest 60% of your money in that part, but sometimes it's less. There is, and you should be aware of that, there is a requirement also that the national funding shall be commensurate to the EU funding rate, meaning roughly, you know, in the same amounts, but not necessarily exactly the same amount. Some member states, I don't know what Cyprus did, to be honest, but some member states will, for example, increase the funding rate for the universities, but decrease the funding rate for the large enterprises on the national side. Others will just follow these amounts. So there is a variety of possibilities there. It depends on basically what the national authority wants to encourage. I mean, if they want to encourage the SMEs, they will provide more funding for the SMEs. But obviously, you're also bound to the block exemption rules of the European Union, which are rules that are that are discussed at the level of the World Trade Organization. And so these are, the national authority also has certain limits there regarding how much funding they can give to you, and you should be aware of that also. Right. And the important difference, there are a few differences with the Excel calls. I'm not sure if Cyprus requires a Part C, a national part, which then can be submitted on a website or not. We can discuss that maybe later in the Q&A. But everything here that I discuss here is in the guide for applicants. Right, I'm not going to go through these, you'll get the presentation, but I do not think it's that important. Evaluation and selection is done mainly by the experts, as in Horizon Europe. The selection is done by the Public Authority Board, and it's based on the expert ranking. But of course, if a project is selected or not depends on the available national budget of all participant in proposals. So sometimes, the national authorities of certain participants are running out of national funding, and then the participants can still participate, but only with the Horizon Europe funding, for example. And the timing is, well, you saw it, the selection and decision will be in November. Then you will have time, December, to sign the grant agreement, the national grant agreement, and there will be, in November, and then the gap will start, and in the meantime you can prepare your national grant agreement, and the start of the project is somewhere in 2023. And I should say very briefly a few words about the CHIPS Act, because a bit unlucky for all of us, but Europe barely started, we barely started in November, and in February we already were made aware that the Commission wants to change our joint undertaking to a CHIPS joint undertaking. They published a very large set of documents on digital sovereignty and the CHIPS Act. You probably heard about that. I give you here some of the websites, and you can read up for yourself. But the main point here is that we have an issuing problem. We're too depending on mostly China and Taiwan for certain key components, and we would like to have part of the production back here in Europe. And not only of the manufacturing of semiconductor, but also the packaging and also of the design. And so the CHIPS Act basically contains 3 pillars. There is a CHIPS for Europe initiative, there is a framework to ensure the security of supply, and there is a coordination mechanism for the member states and the Commission. I'm not going to discuss Pillar 2 and Pillar 3, but we KDT joint undertaking is involved in the CHIPS joint undertaking. And what we will need to do in this CHIPS joint undertaking is, next to what we're already doing in the KDT, so what I showed you in a moment ago, we will also have to look at large-scale design innovative capacities. We will have to support and develop new pilot lines that will be pulled by RTOs. We will have to work more on quantum ships. We will have to work more on competence centers across Europe and establish a CHIPS fund. Now, the CHIPS fund is something that we're not in charge of. That will be the European Development Bank, European Investment Bank, sorry, who is going to do that. But the competence centers, just a short word about competence centers. There is a big issue in Europe, that is that we do not have sufficient specialized people in the design, the technologies of electronics are very large here. And so we are going to push that. And the design, well, as you know, it's nice to be able to have all these very nice technologies, but you need you need something to make that, okay? And that's, design is basically the link between all these nice semiconductor electronic technologies, and on the other hand, the applications, the what you want to do with all that, because you need design at the level of the chips, design at the level of the circuits, design at the level of the circuits, the systems, and then you need obviously also the architecture and design of the whole system. Okay, so these are becoming very complex things, and Europe has a certain, has a certain knowledge about that, but more will have to be done about that. Voilà, and that ends my presentation. One piece of advice is, you should not try for this first call, and certainly if you've never, been involved in Excel or something, to start your own project. I really recommend you first to participate and to try to participate in one of the existing projects. I think that is the safer way, because then you will learn from the community, from your peers in that project, in that consortia, how to set up a project, how, what the difficulties are. And as I said, our projects in general can be quite large. They don't need to be large. We encourage small projects, but it so happens that the average number of participants in our projects is around 20. So this is already, quite sizable. And I would also very strongly suggest to organize your local community, because united you're stronger. What one hears from can help others also in your community to watch out for the next calls, also to participate to the brokerage events, etc., etc. So good luck with your application. Don't hesitate to contact us. And of course, make sure and spend your time in reading our documents, but also the documents on Horizon Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Yves, for this excellent presentation. I will go on with my presentation regarding the national funding rules and conditions. And as I mentioned at the end of the webinar, we will have the opportunity to receive questions from you at the Q&A session and respond to these questions. Before my presentation, I would like to mention that the Research and Innovation Foundation has established the new European Partnership program in order to support the participation of Cypriot organizations in joint calls launched by European joint undertakings in which Cyprus is participating. We have already launched 2 calls for proposals for the Innovative SMEs Partnership, the Eurostars program. And now we have launched the last week the KDT calls for proposals. Before my presentation, let me give the floor to my colleague Anna Maria Christoforou, which is also involved in this development of the calls, to provide you with some brief information regarding the forthcoming calls and the participation of Cyprus in additional joint undertakings.
Hello, everyone. Besides the KTD, Cyprus is also participating in the Clean Energy Transition Partnership, the Driving Urban Transition Partnership, and the Sustainable Blue Economy Partnership. The calls for the first two partnerships, meaning clean energy and driving urban growth, will be soon announced in September, with deadlines at the end of the year, beginning of 2023. The call for the Sustainable Blue Economy partnership will be announced beginning of 2023. It's still under discussion, the planning of the call. So you should expect the next calls for the 2 partnerships to be in September. We will have relative webinars at the time in order to inform you regarding the rules and participation requirements.
Thank you very much, Anna.
Thank you, Marino.
So let's move with my presentation. Can you confirm that you can see my presentation?
No, it's okay.
Thank you. So as mentioned, we have established the European Partnerships program to cover the participation of Cypriot organizations in this joint calls for proposals. More specifically for this specific partnership, we have launched the European Partnerships Key Digital Technologies program to cover the participation of Cypriot organizations in these specific calls already described by Yves that are launched by the KDT joint undertaking. So through this program, we aim to encourage local enterprises, universities, and other organizations to participate in transnational R&D projects in the areas of electronic components and systems. Through the program, we also aim to promote the networking and the collaboration between Cypriot and foreign organizations through their participation in these projects. The budget for the 2021-2027 period is 3 million euros. So we have put all our budget in the first calls, but the remaining budget we will be transferring the forthcoming calls to cover the participation of Cyprus in the next years. So for 2022, we have launched 5 national calls, each one to cover the respective call announced by the KDT program. And as mentioned before, to support the participation of local organizations in these proposals. So the budget is 3 million euros for 2022. And again, I will repeat that remaining budget, unused budget, will be transferred in the next call for proposals in 2023. So the funding per project for the Cypriot partners is €500,000 euros. As mentioned by Yves, the deadline to submit a proposal in the KDT initiative is the 21st of September. But local organizations will have to submit a national brief proposal, a short proposal in the next day by the 22nd of September 2022. I will provide you some more information regarding the national proposal in the next slides. So let's not repeat what Yves has already mentioned. Just to say that we have 3 calls covering innovation actions and 2 calls covering research and innovation actions. We will see in the next slides that for innovation actions, we will cover experimental development activities. And for research and innovation actions, we will cover industrial research activities. So what are the rules for participation? Besides the general rules for participation that applies for the Horizon Europe, meaning that we will have to have 3 participants from 3 different countries to participate in a transnational project, we also have the national rules for participation. In general, funding in these joint programs is provided by the respective national funding organizations for each country. This program has a specific particularity where, as you have already seen by the Yves presentation, the KDT provides direct funding to the participants, and the countries provide additional funding up to maximum funding intensity, which complies with the state aid regulations. So regarding the Cypriot consortium, that means that the organization from Cyprus that will participate in a transnational project, the host organization to submit the proposal to the RIF could be an enterprise, a research organization, or another private or public organization. Again, research organization, enterprises, and other organizations can participate as partner organizations in the Cypriot consortium. The maximum number of organizations in the Cypriot consortium could be up to 3 participants. So the host organization plus 2 other participants. This is the maximum number of participants, but you know, it's allowed to participate as a mono-beneficiary regarding the Cypriot consortium. So the participation of large enterprises is only permitted when an SME is also participating in the Cypriot consortium. This is a specific rule by the Commission, since the calls are being funded by European structural investment funds. And the participation of startups is not allowed except for those with marketable product services and with record for sales and turnover and audited financial statements for at least 2 years. So this is a national rule. We try to have targeted calls. So we have different targeted calls for startups, but for these programs, we aim mostly to cover ongoing SMEs with a track record to participate in these large transnational projects. So for the innovation actions, that means the 3 first calls, we have two additional conditions for participation for the Cypriot organizations. And these are that the participation of an SME in the Cypriot consortium is obligatory. These are the innovation actions. As I mentioned, they are covering experimental development activities. They cover higher TI technology readiness levels and technologies that are closer to the market. So we want Cypriot enterprises to participate in these calls. This is a common practice actually followed by many of the countries. So if you go through the work program document and go through the national funding rules of other countries, this is a common practice followed by most of the other countries. And further to the participation of the obligatory participation of an SME, at least 30% of the Cypriot consortium's participant budget should be allocated to these enterprises. So what are the eligible activities and costs? As I mentioned, for innovation actions, we cover experimental development activities. This is the 3 first calls as provided in my previous slides. For the last 2 calls covering research and innovation actions, we cover industrial research activities. The eligible costs for the Cypriot organizations are personnel costs, depreciation of instruments and equipment costs, cost for external services, cost for traveling abroad for the purpose of the project, consumables, other specific costs that cannot be covered under the above categories, and overheads is a standard rate up to 20% of their costs. Just to note here that all beneficiaries that have not previously participated in the Restart programs should make use of the simplified cost method standard scale of unit cost for the calculation of the personnel cost. So you can find all of our national funding rules in the Restart 2016-2020 work program, which is uploaded together with the call for proposals in the IRIS portal. So if mentioned before that there is a direct funding to be provided by the Commission through KDT. You can see the funding rates in the green table. These are the funding rates to be provided by the Commission. So the Cyprus will complement this funding with additional national funding, and in a way that the total funding rate will not exceed the maximum funding rate allowed by the state aid rules. So for example, if we have a small enterprise participating in first call, the innovation action topic 1, we can see that this small enterprise may receive 30% from the Commission and 30% from RIF through national funding, so that the final aid intensity will not exceed 60%, which is the maximum aid intensity allowed by the state aid rules for small enterprises for experimental development activities. So the same practice applies for the rest of the calls and the rest of the activities. Universities will be funded by RIF with a percentage up to 65%, and they can receive the rest 35% by the Commission through KDT. When you submit your proposal, the joint proposal in the Commission's portal, you will have to submit a budget table. So this final budget should comply with the budget that you will submit in the national proposal, which will I will explain in the next slides. So regarding proposal submission, as mentioned by Yves, the transnational proposal is submitted through the Commission's funding and tenders platform. I will provide the links for you in my presentation. And the coordinator of the Cypriot consortium should also submit a proposal to the RIF through the IRIS portal. So the project coordinator for the Cypriot consortium and all other local participant organizations should register in advance on IRIS platform. This also applies to the Commission's platform as well. You have to register in advance in order to be able to participate or to submit a proposal. So as I mentioned, the proposal submitted to the RIF is a short proposal and includes only general information regarding the transnational proposal, the consortium, and has a detailed budget for each partner participating in the Cypriot consortium. So you have to, for those of you that are familiar with the IRIS portal, you have to complete, to fill in the part A, which is completed electronically. And you basically provide general information and the budget. And for private organizations, that means enterprises and other private organizations, for the host organization, if this organization is an enterprise, the audited financial statements of this organization for the previous financial year or the year preceding this year should be submitted as annex. Organizations that have undergone a financial viability check by the RIF in the frame of their previous contract preparation with a valid financial viability check results are exempted and should not submit these audited financial statements. For enterprises, again, we also need an official proof regarding the registration of updated data of these participants' ultimate beneficial owners in the competent national registry. This might be an email confirming that these participants have updated their data by the company's enterprises commissioner in Cyprus, or a print screen from the Ariadne portal of the Cyprus Republic. And we also need this declaration regarding the ultimate beneficial owners of applicants in this program. So we have a direct link to this declaration, which is also uploaded in our portal. So as in all joint programs, the evaluation procedure and the selection procedure is being organized centrally by the respective office of each initiative, and it's already explained by Yves. The funding decision is taken centrally by all the participating countries in the program and is based on the results of the scientific evaluation, the available EU and national budgets, and the priority to focus topics. As mentioned by Yves, the information, the outcome of the evaluation should be around 5 months from the submission deadline, and the signing of the grant agreements should be around 8 months from the submission deadline. So useful documents. Yves already mentioned about the work program, the strategic research innovation agenda, and the guidelines for applicants. You can find the relevant links in my presentation as well as the links to the national calls for proposals on IRIS portal. For information and support, you may contact our support service in the RIF for support regarding your registration in the IRIS portal and submission of proposals. You may also contact me or my colleague, Mr. Yorgos Prokopiou, which are responsible for this cause. And for issues regarding the submission of the joint proposal, you should contact the KDT office in the email address you see in the slide. Yves has already mentioned the collaboration tool of ECS. So please register in the tool and search for project ideas and look for partners in order to join some proposals that are being prepared by other organizations, or even to propose a new project idea. The Research and Innovation Foundation participates in the E-Enterprise Europe Network, which is a global network of organizations supporting the participation of SMEs and other organizations in international programs and supporting their internationalizations and networking with other organizations. So through this network, we have access to a huge database with project ideas or business propositions in order to identify and find partners either for research purposes or business purposes. So we can help you create your own R&D profile. These profiles are anonymous, and we can support you in submitting these profiles in order to identify partners to participate in international programs. So please contact us should you need any support, or should you are interested to generate such a profile. You can also go through the EN global database in order to identify project ideas or identify any other partners for business or research purposes. So thank you very much, and we are open for questions. Please use the Q&A section to submit your questions. So we have a question about the length duration of funded projects. According to our national rules, the participation of Cypriot organization in these projects should be from 12 up to 36 months. According to the statistics of the previous calls, and if you can confirm this, the majority of the projects are between 24 and 36 months.
Yes, that is true, but what we've seen, and that is mainly due to COVID and some difficult international situations, is that a lot of the projects that were planned in 3 years got extensions with 6 months up to a year. And I believe that this trend will continue. I'm afraid that, you know, although the projects are planned for 3 years, extensions will be needed for various reasons. So I'm not sure if you as a national authority can accept this type of extension.
Yes, we provide we have some limitations because as mentioned, our calls are being funded by the European structural funds. But in specific cases, we will provide the opportunity to Cypriot participants to have an extension. We have a question regarding the intellectual property of the submitted ideas and who is the owner. In the case of transnational calls, partners maintain a consortium agreement, and usually these issues are being covered by this agreement or by bilateral agreements between the partners. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, I'd like to say about that the consortium agreement is an obligation under Horizon Europe, in other words, and also therefore under KDT. So we will sign a grant agreement, but at the first review, we will ask the consortium if they signed a consortium agreement, okay? And the coordinator should then say yes or no. And partners that refuse to sign the consortium agreement could be kicked out of the project at that point. This being said, the Horizon Europe grant agreement already contains a full list of, I would say, fallback options for intellectual property. Okay, so if there is nothing in the consortium agreement about IP, then the general rules of Horizon Europe, which are fairly broad and fairly relaxed, let's say, are applicable. Okay.
So I don't see any other questions. We'll give some more minutes if someone wants to submit a question. Just to say again something about the budget. As I mentioned, you will have to submit a budget in the international proposal, and this budget should comply with the budget that we will submit in the national proposal. What would be different would be the funding rates, because we have the same budget actually, and the Commission covers a specific funding rate over this budget with the Horizon Europe rules, and we will cover the other percentage with according to our national funding rules. So I hope this is clear for you. If this is not clear, maybe we'll have the opportunity to discuss it with applicants in the near future and before the submission of their proposals. So please, if you have anything else or you need any more clarifications, please submit a question. Let's wait for another 1 or 2 minutes. So no questions. I don't know if Yves has anything more to add.
Well, maybe this. It might look. Our system might look a bit more complex. National authority, EU, different grants, applications, etc., etc. But please, you've seen the figures of Excel. People do find very good reasons why they want to participate in our projects. And I think one of the very important reasons is that because you're involved in a larger project, you're also involved in a fairly large ecosystem, okay? Which makes that a lot of companies that achieve this, or get into these larger ecosystems have somehow also for their activities an added benefit, not only because they're in certain projects, but it allows them to get in contact with universities that can do some of their research. It allows them to contact with other companies that can buy their product or that can share common topics, etc. So I would say don't be scared by the seemingly more complex environment you have to move in. And by the way, this this seemingly more complex environment, often it's the task of the coordinator to make sure that everything runs. You have to take care of the national part. You have to make sure that you introduce everything that the coordinator asks you to introduce, but it's really up to the coordinator to handle the rest of it. So I do believe that even for smaller companies, even for smaller universities that don't have lots of staff, this has definite advantages. So I really encourage you to participate to our projects. As I said, the office, we're not in charge of putting consortiums together and things like that. You will have to find a way and to network with the community. But we have informed, our 3 industry associations that, there is a budget for the Cypriotic partners, and so they can expect to see them popping up, and we hope that, you will find a way into our community. Okay.
I suppose that many organizations already maintain their networks participating in other European programs. So, but for those of you that you have not already been in contact with other organizations to participate in these calls, please use our collaboration tools.
Absolutely.
The collaboration tool of the ECS and the Enterprise Europe Network networking opportunities. So we will upload the presentations and the recording by the end of the day, and will be available to everyone registered or participating in this event. So I cannot see any other questions. So I would like to thank all of you for your participation. Special thanks to Yves for your excellent presentation and clarifications provided. I would like to thank my colleague Anna Maria for the information provided about other calls under the European Partnerships program, and wishing everyone a nice weekend and a nice day. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Bye.